So hello people of the internet, it's Martin Miller here once again with another installment of the vlog, and more particularly the whole conversational series that I've been doing. Actually, I don't know how many videos at this point in time I've uploaded for the vlog, because as it is now, it's only one of them, but we shall see how that goes. So, as you can see, I got a very, very special guest with me today. Tom, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Not that you need it, but we'll do it anyways, just to be...
I like being introduced as special. That always makes me feel very good. Yeah, hi guys, Tom Quayle here. Obviously, UK-based fusion guitar player. I'm starting to...
The F word?
We're not actually gonna discuss this, but I'm starting to find that word. I keep doing this. I don't know why I keep doing this.
That's why.
I've developed a weird complex about it. But anyway, yeah, jazz, stroke fusion, stroke whatever you want to assign genre-wise to me, guitar player from the UK. But thank you for having me on, dude. Really, really glad to be here. And
as some of you might know, Tom and I have been friends for ages now, played a whole bunch together, hung out, discussed, and I remember so many drives, you remember that one time we drove down from Scotland to your place, and we always have these great discussions that go on for hours and hours and hours. And some of this stuff I find to be really valuable and probably interesting to a lot of people out there. So here's an opportunity for you guys to be fly on the wall and watch one of those discussions go down, as we want to tackle a bunch of topics. And I think the first topic is going to be, let's say, loosely career related. And the inspiration for this, for the choice of this topic for me, was that as of recent, I've seen a lot of people struggle making a living. I've seen more people than ever try to make a living in our field of, let's say, self-employed guitar players who base their career more or less loosely around the internet. And I've seen a lot of them struggle. A lot of people are coming out nowadays and talking about their struggles more openly. But I assume, judging from that, that more people struggle than we might think they do.
Oh yeah.
I know we've both had our struggles. Maybe not so much, at least in the last couple of years, not so much financially, but more with in the grand scheme of motivation.
Yeah, in a big way. I mean, me and you, whenever I talk to anybody about this, I always kind of affirm the conversation by saying, yeah, Martin and I have talked about this loads, because you're the guy really that I think we've had similar experiences in terms of keeping motivated throughout our career. Because if you think about it, the funny thing is, we've been doing the same thing since around 2008, 2009.
I came on board a little later than you.
Yeah.
I think I started doing things more seriously around 2010, but I've been on YouTube since 2007 or so. Yeah.
But I mean, exactly. So that's nearly 10 years. So obviously we both had careers before that were, we were both professional musicians before that, but the internet took off, and any job that you do for that length of time, my dad's a veterinary surgeon, and he absolutely adored, well, he used to be, he's retired now, but he adored everything about that job. But they reached a point where he was just thinking, I'm working 14 hours a day, not that we have that struggle, that's not the struggle, but you can't keep motivated doing the same thing unless there are some weird people, they're not weird, but there are some people who just for some reason seem to be so motivated all the time. They probably live in LA and have sunshine all the time.
Saying that, have you seen the vlog of Yannick Quistella?
Once or twice, yeah.
And he's that kind of guy. That's kind of like his trademark thing of his vlog. There's a couple kids yelling out there, distracting me. His trademark is kind of, oh Jesus.
It was like the drilling on the first vlog.
Yeah, that was great too. On the Sunday night. Noise. Yeah, I might have to close the window here. Anyway, so his trademark is kind of how motivated, or that's the message he tries to get across, how motivated he is and how much he loves to do the work, and how he gets up at 5 to go to the gym and then does 15 hours of practice and another 16 hours of video editing and then goes to travel. And that's, I think, a big part of his success. I find that amazing. I wish I had that kind of quality about me.
Who's the sax player as well? Who's very similar?
Bob Reynolds.
Yeah, there you go. So same kind of thing, and again, it's maybe a Californian thing where you get so much sun.
But he's
refreshing.
Yeah. He's British,
day.
but
I mean, I don't. I don't mean that, but these guys, they really manage to stay motivated somehow. Mm-hmm. And I know that the hardest thing for me, having done this for so long now, is to wake up in the morning and think, right, what am I going to do today that keeps me motivated? And I've done all sorts, like I bought, you might be able to see it in the background of my, you can tell in this
the whiteboard?
Room, like, what did I say? Did I say blackboard?
I don't know. I didn't really hear it. The quality was a bit choppy.
So yeah, I've got the whiteboard in the background. That's, by the way, it's about this big. So I obviously that gives you a very visual reference of how motivated I was, because I didn't buy one this big to put lots of stuff on. I bought one this big. But yeah, like I've tried writing on there, and my room is fairly chaotic. So you can see that my mind is not. That's the other thing with these guys. You look at like Yannick's videos and you see like everything's so neat and everything's so tidy. And these guys.
I mean, look at this mess.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I'm shooting reviews at the moment, and I was saying to you before we started, that my room's a mess, so I need to make an excuse about the fact that it's a mess, and the excuse is I'm shooting reviews. But I bought the whiteboard in order to kind of motivate myself and write things that I could do on there, things to do with practice, to do with career-based things, videos I could shoot, so on and so forth. And I think if you try and force it in that way because you've seen someone else do it, it's never going to work. You can't change who you are. You can use.
Yeah, but those videos have that Yannick does. They have the power to inspire, at least.
They do, absolutely. They definitely.
And it kind of gives me not that I'm nearly on his level, but it kind of gives me a kick in the butt if I see, this guy is even as talented as he is. He has to do so much to make ends meet. Mm. So I better get my ass up and do something.
And once you start doing stuff and reaping some of the rewards, it's a little bit like if I persuade myself to do a live stream. Okay, now not persuade myself, that makes it sound too depressing. Like,
no, I do persuade myself to do the live streams because I'm not into it. I mean, you're a much more experienced live streamer than I am, but the last one, for example, when I was in Macedonia on my vacation, it was pure stress.
Really?
Afterwards I basically collapsed. I turned the camera off and hugged my girlfriend, and I was basically, man, that took so much life out of me.
Now I missed that. What were you live streaming?
Just talking to people.
Oh, not playing, just talking.
Yeah.
Wow. So
because there's so many people. It was a very well frequented live stream. I had like 150 up to 200 people up at any times, and at the end of the video I had like 5,000 views or so. It went really well, but people asked so many questions, and there was so much interaction going on. And I tried to please everybody. It pushed me a lot. It soaked a lot of energy for me.
Yeah, you see, one of the things that, because I very rarely do talking live streams. In fact, some of them I'll just literally play. But one of the things I don't do, because of the way I live stream, which I don't want to reveal too much about because I have secrets that make it so look and sound so good. But
you shall
if you're live streaming and you're staring at your phone, you can constantly see all the questions coming up, and it gets very overwhelming very quickly. Like we have the same thing with the guitar hour. We have one screen over here which has got the image that we can see of us, so we can check it's all working. And on the left-hand side, there's this enormous monitor with the chat on. And you find yourself constantly staring at it, and if you just stare at it, you're in trouble.
I said this to Martina on the last episode when you were unleashing your legato mayhem on us. You were still kind of reading comments at the same time.
You get used to doing it though, but if you try and kind of keep on top of all of the chat, it becomes too much for you, and you can't actually concentrate on what you're doing. Yeah. Like if we were having this conversation now and we were live streaming this, which would be cool as well, but then there was chat going on over here as well, you can't possibly concentrate on both things. So it becomes very, very stressful.
I find that awful. You know what I do? I try to maybe cover that part of the screen and have Martina or somebody else post me the questions.
Yeah, exactly. Skype. So a little bit like when you did I think this was the way it worked, and it's the way we do it in Lick Library. When you do the JTC live streams, do they feed you questions? Yeah. So is it Johnny or someone feeding you questions?
Stephen or Johnny. Yeah.
Which makes way more sense, because that way you can address the question much more thoroughly. Then the hard part, and I realise we're moving off topic here a little bit, so we'll try and sway back in a minute. The hard part then is to not spend half an hour answering one question. That's the hard thing with live streaming, actually.
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged.
It's like having 150 people in a room, but it's, in a masterclass or something, but it's way different, because the person who's watching on the end of their phone doesn't have 150 people around them. So they're by themselves. So they think in their mind, and I've done this as well, that they're the focus of your attention. So if they ask you a question, they're oblivious to the fact there's 149 other people watching, and you can't spend all of your time and focus on that one person. So, yeah, I can see how it would be exhausting.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't do a lot of it.
Yeah, but for me, that is work, period. I've talked about this with Levi. I don't know if at this point that conversation is going to be online. We filmed a couple, and we talked about private persona versus business/internet persona. And on the live stream thing, I'm definitely turning on my internet persona.
How interesting, right?
Yeah. I mean,
that's really interesting, because I'm the total opposite. Now, I'm not saying that one is...
It's not very different. I'm still the same dude. I'm not faking anything. But for me, it's, okay, this is a performance. This is as much of a performance as if I were to go on stage and play guitar.
Now, interestingly, I used to do that as well. And it's not me saying I used to do that. You should stop doing that. I think it's right for you to do that. I used to do that. And the reason I don't anymore is because of the guitar hour. Because the guitar hour is just banter constantly.
Yeah, but it's ultra casual.
It's so casual. So that then follows over into that's my live stream persona, if you like, because you do have a persona definitely for each thing that you do.
So you know what, that's the reason, I understand the audience demands more speaking and / documentary / vlog type material, and I can do it, but I don't like talking to a camera by myself. I feel kind of silly. Which is why I invite people like you or my students, etc., to do those kind of things, because I can be myself. I can talk to you.
Actually, I think this is way more interesting because you get a proper conversation as opposed to...
Yeah, well, yes and no. It depends on who you are and what your audience expects from you. A certain audience is going to expect, if they log onto your channel, they just want you and only you. But I mean, I pick my guests in a way that my audience is interested in them. I think anybody who's ever heard of me surely knows who you are and has an interest.
Well, that's why you described me as special in your intro.
Maybe. Or maybe it's the donation you made via PayPal to my account.
It could be. That's my motivational payment to you.
Exactly. So back to the motivational topic. Yes. Yeah. How did we get so distracted though? How I had to motivate myself to do the live stream.
Yeah.
Although a thing about me has changed in recent years. I'm a chronic procrastinator, as you might know.
Oh yeah.
And I think you struggle with the same thing. It's something we can address specifically. But something about me has changed where I start feeling, maybe a thing with age, maybe sort of a midlife crisis thing, where I feel absolutely terrible for procrastinating. Yeah. And I just had a 2-week vacation in Macedonia, and I could simply not just switch my mind off work. I had to do the live stream, had to do a couple lessons, had to do a bit of video editing, had to do a bit of this and a bit of that. I feel I get anxious when I can't do at least something every day.
Yeah, now interestingly, I've got a bit of a reputation, probably because I go on and on about gaming a lot and stuff like that, and tech and stuff, and I'm sort of like the last post I did on Facebook was for a giant 58-inch TV and stuff like that. I used to do a lot of gaming, and Andy Wood and I, we've done gaming in the past.
Yeah, sure.
Like we've done 4 or 5 hour gaming sessions.
Battlefield, you name
which
it.
I suck at so badly. Yeah. But we played that. What was the Divinity? Original Sin. Yeah, and that was a weird game.
That was shit.
But we played a lot of games, and I used to do loads. I'm really into Dark Souls and Bloodborne and all those kind of games. And now, like, I have a PlayStation 4 Pro set up here, and it gets switched on. In fact, I looked on Steam the other day, and I'd done 2 hours of gaming in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Because now I feel, and especially having Inara, my daughter, I feel so guilty when I'm not doing this. Or for me, the other thing that I do a lot of these days in terms of career, like work, is video work.
Same. You mean all those live videos I do, how much, you know, but I don't know if the audience has a remote idea as to how much damn work that is to be working with 8 camera angles at the same time.
Oh yeah. The maximum I do is 3, so 8 is insane. Just keeping everything synchronized and, kind of, organized is a nightmare. But yeah, I mean, these days, procrastination had become such a big problem for me that I've developed such a guilty feeling whenever I procrastinate that I almost can't procrastinate anymore. Whenever I find the worst one for me, and I don't know how you are with this, is the Chrome, like I run Windows, and if you run OS X, exactly the same thing. All of your programs that you use are on the bottom of the screen, either in the dock or on the taskbar in Windows. And I click on Chrome, and it's almost an instinctual immediate response to click on the Facebook bookmark.
Terrible.
Within Chrome.
I know.
And like I'll load up Chrome to do something and I'll click on Facebook, like intermittently, every 3 minutes I'll click on Facebook and update it.
You know what? We should probably seek out an app or something that logs statistics as to how often we check, at what frequency, etc., and how many hours you spend, just to make it obvious for you as to how much time you're actually wasting on it. Because to be realistic, what speaks against checking emails and Facebook? Let's go high, 5 times a day. What are you missing, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I probably check it. I mean, I don't know, but let's make an estimate. Let's say it's 50 times a day. That probably is conservative.
I would say so, yeah.
If you include the phone and the browser and so on and so forth, and the fact that this goes off every single time. Like we've talked about this on the Guitar Hour.
I don't have this. I don't do push notifications.
Well, we did a thing on the Guitar Hour where we switched this off. Switched off Facebook notifications for a week, and it was a very, very good week. It was, but you switch them back on again, and there's a really interesting. I don't know if you're into this guy, but there's a really interesting Sam Harris podcast about this.
I love the guy.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw this one, but his podcast that he does. There's a really interesting one about how technology is basically taking over our lives and so on and so forth, and how the quality of life and the quality of work as well is so influenced by the amount of time that Facebook and YouTube and Netflix and so on and so forth, and they're all competing for your time.
Yeah.
And, in a way, ironically, we're kind of, with what we do, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're also competing for people's time, and we're also competing for people to watch our videos, so on and so forth. But at least what we're doing, we're only competing for a small amount of your time, whereas Facebook is competing for almost as much time.
We've been going on for about 30 minutes.
Oh dear.
Speaking of a small amount of time. But we Yeah, I mean, who are we to judge? We try to entertain, we try to educate.
Yeah.
Is that a waste of time? I wouldn't think so.
No,
Because we're not blasting people's minds with memes and stuff like that.
No.
Like how'd you call it? Like key stimuli.
Right, yeah.
Key stimuli. Not that kind of thing. I like to think that we're a bit more on the special interest side of things, where we have a smaller audience, but they're actually interested in what we really do in a more in-depth way.
I would say we're not stealing time from people. We are adding quality time. And this is not, I'm not just talking about me and you here, just generally people who produce anything that's artistic.
Art, education, science.
Education is another one, yeah. So, even if it's an educational product, it improves someone's quality of life. Hopefully, that's the idea. It improves their mental faculties or whatever, or their ability on the instrument. No, I was going to say it's a little bit like Sam Harris talks on the podcast. His version of this is he's producing a meditation app, and he is saying as well he's trying to compete for people's time because he wants them to use the meditation app, but the end result is that their quality of life improves and they learn a new skill, which is what we're doing, as opposed to, oh yeah, so I see that Martin has uploaded a picture of Martina's cat. And Martina's cat has learned to make rice pudding. How fantastically wonderful that is. And it adds nothing to your day.
Yeah, because it doesn't stick with you. And if it doesn't stick with you and doesn't create a memory, that time is kind of wasted, isn't it? It's wasted lifetime.
Absolutely. And actually, the depressing thing is, like you say, I think it would be incredibly depressing to add all that time up and see how much time you spent on Facebook as a graph.
Then again, yes, that's a new generation problem we have. Back, if you lived a couple hundred years back and you had to travel from one end of the country to another, you'd spend weeks on a tiny path walking. I don't know if that's the greatest lifetime or the greatest way to spend your life.
You could have taken your lute with you.
Yeah.
And practiced your bebop scales. It would have been fine.
True.
But yeah, that whole thing of the procrastination, I mean, I don't know, have you, let me ask you a question, have you found any solutions to this apart from switching off Facebook notifications?
For me, it has been a fundamental change in my lifestyle ever since I have a long-distance relationship.
Oh, right.
And the thing is, when you have a long-distance relationship, you don't get to spend, we get to spend a lot of time together, but we don't. But it's kind of different as if we were to live in the same town, where you would meet each other for 2 hours in the evening and hang out for a little bit. When we see each other, we spend pretty much the entire day. And like that 2-week thing, I was away for 2 weeks and I was pretty much focused only on my relationship. But when now that I'm back, I'm in full work mode to compensate for that kind of.
Yeah.
I guess that's how my change in lifestyle has resulted in a change in my procrastination. How do you call it? Habits.
So you. I mean, you do game as well. Let's take that as an example.
But
when do you
say,
fit that in?
It's kind of fun. This is one thing I want to say. I used to last year. I was playing all the hardcore games like Witcher, Metal Gear Solid, all the huge games. Right now, the only thing I'm playing at all, and even very little, is Rocket League,
I saw that the other day. I was like, Martin's playing Rocket League.
It's a casual game, and what I like about it is you play it for 30 minutes, then you're done.
Yeah. So it does that fix for you.
Exactly.
So have you given up on Fallout 4? Or did you
I went pretty far into it, and now just for the sake of being efficient and progressing my career, I decided just to put it on the shelf for a while. And another thing is, and then we can talk about this, we're kind of the same age. I'm a bit younger than you. I'm 32, you're 36?
36, yeah.
Not that I feel my time is running out or anything, but it's kind of like it's not getting any easier from here to kickstart your career. It's like we're at a critical time now where we can get to a certain level that we then maintain for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And we polish it. We may go a little higher, a little lower, but we're going to try to maintain it pretty much. But we're right now in the critical end phase of that part where we're sort of skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And we have to make that count, I think.
Yeah, funnily enough, within that, obviously you and I, we can't talk about this, and you can edit. I'm not going to talk about anything specific, but you can edit this out if you want. But there are some very interesting things happening for both of us, you know, in the new year and during this year. So in 2018, 2018 is going to be a very interesting year. And funnily enough, even though I'm only 4 years older than you, there was a very distinct thought in my mind when these things were happening. And again, the guys who are watching, if Martin decides to leave this in, because I'm being very vague here, you will find out exactly what we're talking about early next year.
Why don't you people speculate in the comments, please? We like to see
we love a bit of speculation.
What you think it is.
Yeah, and Martin and I are doing a few things. Like at the end of the year, we've got a gig together in November, and we shoot. Well, I don't know if you want to reveal too much about other things that
we can do that. I mean, I'm doing the live session format where I invite my favorite players into the studio, and we make music together. And the plan is to do the same thing with you. Go into the studio, get a kick-ass band, get a great audio engineer, get a video team, and then just go nuts for a couple of days.
Because a lot of you guys will be aware that Martin and I have done a lot of duo stuff together before, so I mean that's interesting. But back to what I was talking about, that there was a definite thought process in my mind of, if I don't do this now, this will be the last chance I ever get to do this.
The gates are closing. That's true.
And even that 4-year gap, would be significant enough that I think there's a funny thing where, and again, this is an interesting motivational thing where the last 2-3 months have totally refocused my mind on. I was getting a little bit, and I don't think this is something that people will be too surprised at. And I think you've suffered from the same thing. Huge amount of lethargy and disinterest in this and music generally. Like we've had discussions about, and people know about this with me already because I've discussed it a little bit. It's not that I got depressed or anything, because I have I'm just very lucky and fortunate that I have a very stable mental state.
Same for me.
It doesn't seem to matter too much what happens to me. I don't get really down and depressed. But as far as my interest in this, and as far as my interest in music generally, it had taken a huge nosedive about 6 months ago. And that had been going on, I think we talked about it 2 years ago, possibly.
We were on tour mostly in 2014, so that's 2.5 years ago. But back then we were right in the middle of it, and for me that was the lowest point.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the lowest it has ever been. For me, I don't know. tried to expand my field of interest, just like you did the video editing, or the building PCs or whatever. That became your new thing. I'm very interested in video editing too as of late. In fact, I spend much more time video editing than practicing guitar. And you know what I spend way more time on than practicing guitar is learning how to sing.
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting new interest for you. Because
that's my substitute drug for...
Yeah, so the two things are kind of congruent in a way. But singing is so different because there's no physical... There is a physical element, but there's no physical element.
But no visible.
It's the same as the guitar. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of an interesting one. And I would imagine that's become something of an obsession, right? That's
absolutely. The behavior I show, the patterns of behavior are pretty much similar as to when I was in my first years of practicing guitar. It's like, all I do is vocals, vocals, vocals. Let's check out this video, video. How is this guy singing? Can I get the isolated vocal track for this? Can I, who's in town who I can hook up for lessons with?
16 again. Yeah.
And I love that. And the great thing, it complements my guitar career because I can do another album that shows both my guitar abilities and also my interest in vocals. I wouldn't say vocal abilities, that would be a stretch, but my interest in vocals.
Well, I can say you have abilities, so that's fine because, I remember sending you messages. You'd send me the videos and go, is it all right? What do you think? And I'd be like, dude, what the hell?
And I didn't know I had it in me, I just didn't know because I never tried.
Well, there was no inkling of it up until the point where you just started doing it, so it was really interesting for me because I know I'll never be able to sing. Annoyingly, my identical twin... Okay. No, I agree. I agree with you. Yes, that's a silly thing to say. However, just naturally, I would need lessons, but naturally I've never had well, actually, it sounds like you were similar. Never had an inclination to sing because when my singing is like, I'll take, a note and I'll sing major and minor triads or I'll sing arpeggios or, that's the extent of this ear training.
But tell you what, from a singer's perspective, even though I'm not a great singer, but from a singer's perspective, singing triads, arpeggios, those kind of things on a single vowel, much harder than singing a song.
Oh, okay, right.
It's because it's so weird. For example, I've major... We're getting sidetracked here. I'm going to stop in a minute. But for example, I recorded some backing vocals recently. It was just ahs, sustained ahs. And it's the hardest thing ever. To get a clean ah on a sustained note, it was a pain in the butt. And whereas if I sing lyrics and I sing a tune and it has a vocal melody, a very catchy melody that is easy to grasp, it's just no problem there at all.
And knowing what I know about your guitar playing as well and just the way you think about music, you're not the kind of guy that would ever auto-tune anything, I could imagine. You'd just be like, no, it has to be, or do you?
Well, there's a certain standard to think. Well, first of all, I'm very careful with the auto-tuning.
Yeah.
I'd only do it if there was a take that I could never, for some reason, never replicate for the way it's expressed or anything like that. If I have the luxury to make a studio quality... First of all, okay, here's the thing. If I do a video where I sit down or casually in front of a microphone and sing along to a tune, I'm not going to do it. If I go for a studio quality recording, I'll just do a million takes.
Yeah.
And if something needs it just needs touching up. It's not like I'm turning my singing into a whole different thing. It's that there's this perception in the public eye that you can turn a shit singer into a good singer by auto-tuning. I can tell you it's not going to happen.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because intonation, and that's the funny thing. Maybe you can draw an analogy to the guitar there. But in my vocal lessons, and I've been taking vocal lessons for 1.5 years,
is it that long now?
We pretty much never, ever talk about intonation. People think hitting notes, singing is hitting notes. Hitting notes is really just a byproduct of good vocal technique.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Interestingly enough, I just finished the Elba Triangle stuff, and I improvised, as I always do, and you do for that kind of project as well, improvised all the solos. So some of them are maybe 2 takes stuck together, but like everything's improvised. And there is one note on that album that's melodined because I did. I'm being really honest here. There was a take, I can't remember which tune it was, it might have been Spain or Inner Edge, I can't remember, and I so loved the solo, but there was one note that just I misslid into it, I can't remember, or like maybe the whammy bar it wasn't where I wanted it to be, and I just couldn't live with it, so I had to melodyne it. So see if anybody can find that melodyne note. I hope you can't.
Well, to say this to the audience, I don't know pretty much any other guitar player out there who does as little editing as you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just a maniac. You're a machine. You just nail everything on the spot. I've seen it happen so many times. So
that's not quite true.
But now that we're getting sidetracked, but this may be a very interesting follow-up discussion.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Let's maybe what do you guys think out there in YouTube land? Is that something you would like to hear of? Is that something you would like us to talk about? If there's anything you want us to talk about specifically, please let us know, and we shall just provide.
So let me bring it back round again.
Yes, please.
Where is your motivational state of mind now as compared to that 2.5 year ago period? It's like, can you be fairly specific about it? Maybe I could talk about that as well.
Okay, back in the day, I was kind of in a phlegmatic state of mind.
Wow.
To where I was not really doing anything. It was not like I was depressed at all. Because like you, I'm a fairly mentally stable person. I'm pretty centered in my life, unless something really, really bad happens.
Sure.
So I wasn't really doing anything. I was playing as much guitar as I needed to. I was doing as much stuff for my career as needed be. But right now my motivation is extremely high, I would say. But not for practicing. Not for improvement on the guitar, but for improving my career.
Right.
So my focus has shifted into a more holistic thing, which is why I'm doing the vlog, for example. I could be woodshedding right now, as they say. I could be practicing my arpeggios and my scales, but I could have been practicing. Instead, I spent the last 4 months writing a new masterclass.
Yeah. Sure.
Amongst other things, I love to mix. I love to produce other artists. There's a couple of projects I'm producing right now. There's videos I'm editing. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. There's the vlog that I'm doing. There's a couple of things that are not directly related to performing on the guitar. And my motivation for that is extremely high, just not specifically for improvement on my main instrument.
So that's interesting, because that would possibly lead people to, I wonder if people would ask this question anyway in the chat underneath, or in the comments section. Do you feel like you're playing now as a point where the career can come first, but you're playing, because there's always this weird kind of race going on in your mind of, is my playing at the point where my career can now move forwards? Or do I keep working on my playing, and then when my playing is at the point where, which never happens by the way, where you think, oh, I'm good enough now, and now I'll jump in and I'll make a load of career-based.
That's I think the biggest mistake you can commit.
Yeah, I agree completely. Although I'm totally guilty of it, I agree completely.
Same here, but if you lock yourself up in your room and not do anything, nothing is ever going to happen. Period.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree completely. Funny enough for me, one of the most motivating things I do every year is going to the Guitar Summit in North Carolina, because if you're going to sit, like you've jammed with Josh Smith, for instance,
Not jam, but we've hung out. Yeah.
You've hung out. So, I mean, you've seen the guy play, like Eric Gales and all these kind of guys. So, there's a very easy excuse you could make in your mind, especially if you're a guy where, like the style of music that I play and you play, there's a lot of people on all sorts of instruments who are insanely high level.
Yeah.
Like you only have to look at a guy like Anton, for instance, or like Federico. They play a bass, they don't play guitar. But you watch them play and you just think their mental process, their ears, everything that they do is such a high level that, how can you even begin to compete is the wrong word, but just exist next to those guys?
Yeah, but they ask themselves the same thing when you play guitar.
Of course. And, you go to one of, like the Guitar Summit, and you've got Eric Gales, Josh Smith, all of the, like Paul Jackson Jr., all of these insane musicians, Isaiah Sharkey, Eric Walls, all of these insane guys who are touring with some of the best players in the world. And there's a very easy excuse you can make in your mind to go, do you know what, I'll find a way out of this. I don't think I should do it because this is going to be really hard work. And if I screw up, that's it, my reputation's ruined. Mm-hmm. Now, diving in with both feet and doing a reasonable job of it. Like this year, for me, so I played a remark you made. Do you know the weather report tune? Oh, well, you know it because I play it
on our tour
in our set. So, and I'll probably end up playing it with the band in November because I love the tune. It's a really great tune and it's good for a band. But they lost the charts before the gig, so we're kicking off, and it's got a very, very, very distinct melody. It's an interesting tune in that it's all melody and then one solo of a very specific section, and then it's an out. Kind of not a head, but like some sections that are basically doubled between the bass, the piano, and the guitar, or the sax originally, and none of that happened. So it ended up basically just being a jam in E flat major in front of Eric Gales, Josh Smith, all these guys. Now the thing is, actually, nothing motivates you more than thinking, right, I've got to be professional here. I've got to do what I am supposed to do. So of course, what did I do? I trust the band will play something, and rather than just stop the whole thing and go, no, diva central, this is not working, sort it out. I just kept playing, and I did the legato thing and played some lines that were interesting. Do the whole thing, just get in the mindset of this is going to be okay. Just do what you're here to do. Be a professional, and they loved it.
And I was going to say that they probably loved it. Yeah.
You've got Eric Gales telling you from a different planet and Josh Smith hanging out, just having a great time jamming, so on and so forth. Those kind of things, unless you put yourself in the position where these things, if someone asks you to do them, just say yes and then deal with the consequences afterwards. Like I always say this on the Guitar Hour as well. There are points where that's not right, by the way. If you're not ready for it, obviously don't do it.
I was going to say, not everybody is ready for it, and I think certain people jump into the career mindset too early.
Absolutely, there's a fine balance.
Because there's a point where you're learning, and there's a point where you're having a career, and there's a large crossover portion of that. But you should be very cautious about when you jump in, because also if you start out, there's no way to make up for a first impression that you give.
Yeah.
So I guess the gist of it is that you should be cautious of it, but not over worry. If that's a word.
Again, it's the old cliche, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. I kind of hate using those cliches, but they're a cliche for a reason, and that one particularly is quite useful. But, provided those things go well, they can be that was very motivating for me, to be honest, because they reaffirm, it's very easy. Again, even if you're not a guy who's particularly depressed or whatever with your career, to lose sight of the fact that people like what you do for a reason. Mm-hmm. And you hear yourself play every day. You're every day aware of every single flaw within your playing. You're I would say hyper aware of every flaw. But if people are fans of you and they like what you do, there's usually a reason for it. And provided you're not doing like the videos that Levi was doing the other day where he was playing to Guitar Pro, that kind of thing. Provided you're being genuine as a musician and you're not kind of lying to your audience, that should be something that motivates you to go out and, again, provided you're ready, to go and do things, to actually get out there and, regardless of whether it's, I don't gig very much, but I go and do clinics and, go and play at these kind of shows and play at trade shows and so on and so forth. And I plan on doing a lot more gigging over the next sort of year or so. I think I'm going to have to, but that's a whole different story. But unless you put yourself in the position where you're actually doing these things, I think you just sink into a hole and you will never ever get out of it. I think it's very easy to sink into a hole and go, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready. I'll be ready in 6 months. I'll practice this, and then
it's not going to happen. That's part of human nature. Like if you talk to the 16-year-old me, and you would tell my 16-year-old me what I accomplished now, and what resources I have, and about the fan base I have, and about the reach that I've gained with what I do, I'd be on the floor crying in joy.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. Yeah.
It's just human nature that as soon as you have accomplished something, you get a short burst of happiness from it, and then you move on to the next thing and pursue the next burst of happiness. It's like a drug.
It's all about the bursts of happiness.
Yeah.
It's true, though.
And which is why,
true.
like, aggressively seeking out happiness is not even the most noble thing to do, I guess, because it's something that never stays for an extended period of time. What I'm seeking or trying to seek nowadays is more like being content.
Yeah. I mean, I think contentment is the ultimate goal of life in general.
Yeah.
But for musically, I think it's an incredibly hard thing to get to. Because, again, this is a bit of a cliche, but I think it's a Wayne Krantz thing. He talks about you get interested in a particular musical door and you open it, and 35, 50 doors appear in front of you that you can, like, how do you, like, I'm going to address this as sort of a question, but sort of a rhetorical question in a way, although feel free to try and answer it. How do you ever get to the point where you're content musically? And the difficult thing for people like us, artists in general, and I always cringe a little bit when I call myself an artist, but I shouldn't. I shouldn't do that. That's a whole different conversation. But I shouldn't cringe, but I do. How do you get to the point where you're content? Because
it's the struggle that makes your playing or your music or your product what it is. It's the struggle. Yes, it hardens you, it improves you, it makes you harder working human being.
So this could transition into this second topic that we've got. I don't know if we've even properly addressed the first topic because we've been it's probably my fault, we've been flying around, but like we were going to talk about practice as well.
Well, another thing before we get into our actual second topic, and it ties into with what we're talking about, the whole motivation thing, let's take the dark side of motivation, which could be depression.
Okay, yeah.
Because I see that happening a lot right now, and I think if we addressed it, we would really speak a lot of people's minds about it. Now, we both don't suffer from depression, but I see people, and even people that I'm close to, I see it happening to them. What would you suggest doing about it?
For them?
Specifically for the music industry. We're not talking about personal issues. We're talking about depression based on the lifestyle of a musician.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it a lot, especially with people who work almost exclusively online. And I think I've had some conversations with a few people. I won't name anybody, obviously, but I've had some conversations in person with a few people who are very down about music and their playing in general. And I think the danger with, again, you and I are very against this term, but with this online guitarist thing, or musician in general, is that there's a self-fulfilling prophecy or circle, if you like, that you basically only get feedback or confirmation of what you're like as a player when you post something new online, and you get this feedback loop of comments and likes. It's a really interesting series. Did you watch Black Mirror? Do you get it over there? Yeah. Do you remember the first episode of the second season? Where
Remind me?
It's got Bryce Dallas Howard in it, and she's on they have their phone, and they basically, you have to, like, your social status in life is determined by how many, I think it's
That's
likes.
the third season.
Is it? It's the third season,
Yeah.
sorry.
Awesome episode.
So the newest season,
Yeah.
I won't talk any more about Bryce Dallas Howard because that's a whole different thing.
It's going to get you in trouble.
Yeah, big time. Cheryl knows. But yeah, that whole thing of that kind of feedback loop of constantly assessing how good you are by the amount of interaction with your online material. Now, especially if you're new to this, and when I say new, I mean even in the last 3 or 4 years where things have become so saturated on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, that it's very difficult to break into that now. We were very lucky in a way. I don't want to put it all
because
down
we
to
were
it, but
kind of in the first generation to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So me, you, Rick, Andy, all those guys, and Andy Andy Wood didn't go down the YouTube thing in a big way.
Wait, this fly situation is getting out of hand here. Frickin' neighbor. Bringing in the flies.
Amazing. I do keep seeing them, actually. So I think you have to, it's very difficult, but in a way separate yourself in terms of how you feel about yourself as a musician, not about how successful your career is at this stage, but how you feel about yourself as a musician. Because the thing is, when you're this into music as we are, and as a lot of these people that we see and associate with are, it defines you as a person and how you feel about yourself, the quality of you as a human being. And it's a very unique case because most people go to work, and when they come home, there's a separation. and they have family and so on and so forth. And that separation allows them, to some extent at least, to have this barrier from how they feel about their day as at work and then at home with their family or whatever.
I fully agree. Yeah.
And we don't necessarily have that separation as easily.
It at least helped me to have a separate room to do work. Right. Remember in my old space where I had everything, but when bedroom was my office, was my practice room, was my studio. It was terrible. It was impossible to shut. It was impossible to just shut off and move on to life after work. So this is a whole lot better. Another thing that ties in with what you just mentioned is that a younger player who exposes himself very early online and gets the applause and the praise from a possibly international audience might get used to that. Not only a younger player, but you might get used to that feeling, to that reward. Because I remember when I was in days of conservatory, I would be practicing like a violin etude forever, and I had to play it a couple of times, and I was bombing. And only 2 years into having practiced it, I had my first good performance of it, and I got the reward and the applause that I think I deserved at the time. But nowadays, it's too easy to get to receive that kind of reward, and you get addicted to it way too easily, and you end up being in the game for the wrong reason. And let's say once the interest in what you do, how would you call it, decreases,
wanes slightly, yeah.
So will your motivation.
Yeah. Now the other thing that you have to be very careful of with today's online world is that it's very easy to forget that you don't see these people play in the real world very often at all. And I think we've talked about this before, because we're both not in the game of doing masses of editing of our videos. If I was going to do, like at some point I'll release my album, and on my album I would
check the date of this video, people.
I did say at some point. I didn't say.
Okay, we're very vague about it.
Like I'm getting close. Like the Albert Triangle's out. It will be out at some point soon. So like I'm getting closer to having something out that's that's mine. But if on my album I would probably do a reasonable amount of editing, because I want it to be this perfect package that really represents me very, very well. However, how accurately that represents me is a different matter. Now, I never ever ever edit any of my videos ever. They're always just one take all the way through. Now, that is a true representation of me as a player. But that doesn't mean that all the videos that you see online are true representations to 100% accuracy of a player. Because all of us try and upload the take that was the most perfect. Now, I know, because I've jammed with so many of the guitarists that I respect so well now, and guitar players that I just happen to have seen online and have seen at trade shows or met wherever across the world. You and I have travelled quite a bit, and you do meet people, and you jam with them, and then you get a realistic representation of their playing. Now, it's not a negative thing. It's not meant in terms of saying, oh, all that stuff that you said you could do, you can't do. But you realise that they have just as many flaws as you do, but those flaws are not well represented, if at all represented, in the videos that you see online. So what's happened is there's this sheen of perfection that's demonstrated on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, of these players who never, ever, ever make a mistake. And it's a false representation of what it's like to be a guitar player. Yeah. And especially young guys, there's a positive element to it as well. That imagine if these young guys see that, and they see that as the standard, and they achieve that standard. That's insane. That's amazing. But there's also a negative element to it, a much bigger negative element, which is that people can get so down on themselves as players because they don't achieve that level of perfection.
There's a study that I think it was about orchestras in the UK actually, is how alcoholism in those orchestras is directly proportional to the quality of audio recordings these days.
Really?
Yeah. It's something like that. I don't quote me on it. It's layman's terms too. But the thing is that, first of all, there's so many recordings out there that you have to compare yourself to. Second of all, if you listen to the earliest recordings of classical music, like you could probably put me in the violin section or as the 15th violinist, and you wouldn't mind because you couldn't hear me anyway. But nowadays, transients and audio resolution, everything is so clear and puts so much pressure on the performing musicians that they can't seem to handle it oftentimes.
It doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, I know that I've had problems with this as well, where, you know, it goes for both videos and if you're doing session work, for instance, with somebody, where you feel there's a level of perfection that, because you hear things so differently with your stuff than other people do. You hear it's like, again, the same, the cliched version of this is that you and I probably are totally immune to now, because we've heard our own voices so many times recorded. They sound the same to me now.
Mm-hmm. To me too, especially since I'm a singer now.
Yeah, but most people would hear themselves recorded, and when they listen back, they'd think, "Oh my God, do I really sound like that?" Mm-hmm. Now, I actually am quite lucky in that, again, I quite enjoy listening to myself when I don't mean that in an egotistical way at all, but I don't listen to my guitar playing and cringe. But there are points where I listen to my guitar playing and don't think it's good enough. Mm-hmm. And I think compared to the other guys on this track, or compared to the other people, you know, I'll listen to give you a very sort of recent example, listen to Marco Svogli play something, and it's pure perfection to my ears for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. Okay, he does solos that are just pure perfection. I'll listen to mine and I'll hear a note that I didn't sustain for long enough, or a note that, like, maybe the intonation is slightly off, or the vibrato was slightly too fast, and I'm hearing those details that other people wouldn't even begin to counter.
And that's why you're so great, because you do worry about those things. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just don't get mad about it.
No, exactly. If you start, but that's the point, really, to warn people off getting so involved with the detail of their own playing that it becomes a hindrance to them. You know, you have to be able to step back from your playing a little bit and learn to enjoy your own playing as well. Because if you put so much pressure on yourself that you start hating everything about your playing, you know, you can't motivate yourself out of that scenario. There's no way out of it. You have to relearn to live with your own playing. And who wants to be in that position? I feel very sorry for people who are in that position. I think that's a very sad place to be. I don't know. Have you ever been there? Have you ever kind of felt so bad about your playing that you've not wanted to listen to your own recordings? I would imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, you have.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm very hard on myself, and I've been a notorious perfectionist for most of my life when it comes to music. Not so much when it comes to other things, but when it comes to music, and I've kind of learned to let that go. Like, for example, to give you an example, I spent a year mixing my album, and nowadays, when I listen to the rough mixes versus the complete mix, that phase was 1 year. When I compare that, I can't hear a damn difference.
Wow, okay.
And back in the day, I got so mad about it. But it was the struggle, it was the process of going through it that ultimately shaped my ability to mix an album. Nowadays, I got a friend who's going to come over for mixing in a little bit. I'm mixing his record. It's an insane metal project with 90 tracks average per song. It's beyond anything. And I'm just like, let's make the guitars a bit louder. Should we make them 0.1 dB louder or 0.2 dB louder? And I was like, just make them louder. So, because ultimately, is that really, should you be spending so much time on this thing? Is it really important whether we're talking about plus minus 0.1 dB of loudness on the guitars in a mix that is crowded as hell anyway? Isn't it just more important to really get it done and get it out there for people to appreciate it?
Yeah, and I really have to, because I know all of this, but I'm currently in that middle ground phase where I really, like, 90% of the stuff for my album is written.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it has been written for like 2.5 years, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah, absolutely. Even down to the point, I've got two tracks left to finish. One is this acoustic thing, which I've played for you before, which is like the...
Love it.
That thing, which I just can't end, but it's the least important thing on there in terms of, like, I could write, if I sat down and for 2 days, I'd get it finished. For some reason I haven't. And then there's another track, which is my heaviest track, which is not quite finished yet. But the rest of the stuff is all written. And I've reached a point, and this is a warning for people, if you like. If you leave it and leave it and leave it and leave it, it becomes so easy to keep leaving it that, it's like it's procrastination taken to the ultimate next level, where you get so used to leaving it that you lose all motivation to continue.
Absolutely. Which is why when I do the live sessions, And Martina can probably tell a story about this. She was at the last live session, and we were out for a couple days. Even before that, we went to Musikmesse, so we were away for a couple days, working 24/7. And we get home, watch a movie, and we're both exhausted as hell. She falls asleep. And I'm like, okay, you can probably get out of here, get the hard drive with the data, and sit down and start mixing the damn thing.
Just can't wait. Yeah. Oh no, I can imagine. And I've been like that with all sorts of projects that just not with my own album has become. And again, I say this because I will get it out, and it's made more progress in the last 2 years. That sounds so bad, doesn't it? In the last 2 years, it's made more progress.
I can surely find a video of you from 2009 saying that new album out soon.
I reckon there'd be a 2008 one, because the thing is, at that point in my life, let's if you look at the equation of things on the left that are taking place in your life, and then on the other side of the equation is the level of productivity that you've got. At that point in my life, I lived on. Now, this is not meant in terms of this is somebody's fault. This is just the facts of what goes on in my life right now. So, at that point in my life, I had no responsibilities. I lived on my own. I had no kids at all. I taught guitar for a living 20 hours a week, and that was enough money for me to live off on my own. So I had another 30 odd hours a week. And if I was staying, I used to stay up till 4 a.m. and then get up at like 10. So I could do that. I can't do that anymore.
You're describing my life right there.
Well, no, but that is a really important thing to consider. That again, age plays a factor in this, because as you get older and you have more and more responsibilities, both financially and time-wise, I have to ensure I've made a certain amount of money at the end of the month, because and making an album doesn't make you any money at all.
It's the same here, but my money is spent differently. I have a long-distance relationship. I got to get money for a ticket to the US or a ticket to Macedonia. That is how a large portion of my money is spent. I spend it on, if you will, family as well. It's just...
Yes, so you do have responsibilities. It's not like you're 32 years old. Of course you have responsibilities. But at that point, I was 28 and I had no responsibilities at all. And so I was more productive in... I always think that my technical level at that point was probably the best it's ever been. And that was the point where I really sat down and worked out all the stuff for Modern Legato Part 1 and was really working on all of the... like legato 24/7, was just really interested in that, and was writing, which is why you'll find videos from 2008, 2009 where I'm going, yeah, it'll be out by the end of the year, because at that point, that's what was going to happen. Unfortunately, at that point, one of my problems is, and this is again, you need to be aware of, I've left that so long now that it's going to be coming up to 8-9 years, and my playing has changed. So those things that I wrote back then no longer represent what I feel I am as a guitar player.
Oh, that's another very interesting point you're making. And this is something I talked about with Jack Tamarad. Where he goes, I asked him, do you have an album, by the way? And he was like, no. But you have all those great tunes. Yeah, but I don't like them anymore. I said, no, don't. For my album, I have used tunes that the album was released in 2013 that I wrote in 2004.
Yeah.
And you have to change your mindset about this. You shouldn't be going, I can do a better job now. I can do a better job playing, mixing, writing anything right now than I did in 2013 when my album came out. But the album is a documentation of the journey from 2004 to 2013. It's a collection of thoughts, ideas. It represents my life as a musician, as a person, and that's okay. Yes, it could have been better in this or this or this regard, but at the time, it was the best job I could have possibly done, because I poured my heart and soul into it, and that's why I'm happy with it, even if I sound way different now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how you find this, but I'm always on this torturous kind of divide, but not torturous, that's far too strong a word, but kind of tumultuous divide between the jazz thing and the more kind of rock fusion. I don't know what
and for me it's probably even more extreme, because for me it's really between, well, I'm not a traditionalist jazzer, but let's say jazz-ish music, like songs like Between You and Me, those kind of things. I do play standards too, as you know, and even metal.
It's very, very broad.
It's extreme.
And I have this thing now, like again, maybe you could talk about how this, well, I know the answer to this question. but it's an interesting point for me anyway, again, from a motivational point of view, is the pressure that you can feel. I've talked about this before and other things as well, pleasing the different spectrums of your audience, because we do have spectrums of audience. You know, it's not just, we don't just have a metal audience. Like if you listen to, like if you're an Andy James fan, you're either a guitar player or you're a metal guy.
Yeah.
And that's very specific. You're probably not a jazz guy. You might be, but it's less likely. Whereas we have a spectrum of guys that listen to all sorts of things. And I always feel like I have these guys who, like a fan base who are really into the Tim Miller thing, let's say. Really into the really harmonic thing. They're really into all this kind of, you know, all this interesting, all that kind of harmony.
Yeah.
And then I have the guys who are really into the Greg Howe thing. And then I have the guys who are really into kind of like the more Dorian-esque kind of funk fusion kind of thing that's not really even jazz. You know, it's just like really kind of, I don't know what you call it, but so trying to please all of
minor seventh rock.
Yes, exactly. So you have this whole thing of, man, who do I write for? And I know the answer is
you don't write for
yourself.
anybody but yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I know the answer, but it doesn't stop that from playing in your mind, and you assess the legitimacy of all the music that you write for each audience, and it's a very, very easy.
It's called pandering. Don't do it.
Yes, no, that's right. Yeah, it's a very easy problem to give yourself.
You know,
and of course you shouldn't do it.
One last topic I'm gonna address now, because we've been going on for way too long now, and we got even more stuff to record. This goes hand in hand with what a student told me recently, and he's by far not the only case I've seen that happening with, where he goes, he's a full-time music college student, studies music, but he's lost his motivation for music to a great degree, and he's pursued another career in the meantime. He's earning his money doing something else but playing music. And there's the other case where somebody is in a full-time job or is studying, let's say, philosophy or marketing, whatever, and they want to get into music full-time. What do you advise those people? Because for me, more oftentimes than not, I'll tell them, be very careful about whether you want to get into music full-time, because the amount of downsides this career has can only be outweighed by the amount of fun that it is, if it is as much fun for you.
Oh yeah.
So the only reason I'm sticking to this career is because I love it so much that I put up with all the crap that goes hand in hand with it.
I think just to be a little bit frivolous initially, I think you have to be either the kind of person who can exist with no money and not care, which are very few people, or you have to be the kind of person that's driven enough to be able to find ways to make money and not be very rich, but really enjoy what you do, which is basically what you just described. Now the problem is that if you're in a full-time career doing something other than music, but you do music as a hobby or you do the odd gig, it seems very attractive to do music full-time, because what happens is you enjoy playing music because it's the respite from your everyday job. But as soon as you make it the everyday job, it's the same as anything else that you would do.
Yeah.
It becomes a job.
You get to cherry pick what you do when you have a full-time job. Oh, I want to work on this. Cool. I want to go to a jam session. Cool. You're going to be doing so many things that you didn't sign up for initially when you pursue music as a full-time thing. And I don't think, first of all, those people, I usually advise them to, you know what, consider about, if you have to do it, consider music as a half-time career. Because you get the rewards from your, let's say, your more serious job, whatever that is, because we know being a musician is as serious of a job as it can be. You get the rewards of financial security. And whatever, healthcare, those kind of things, depending on where in the world you are. And you get to be more picky about what you do in music.
Yeah.
You don't have to do as many bread and butter gigs if your bread and butter is provided for you already.
Yeah.
Now, to go to the other end of the spectrum, the guy who kind of wants out of music, but is scared to do it, is it really such a bad thing to think about pursuing another career? I know music has this idealistic connotation to it, where you're a lone warrior fighting against the bad in the world because you pursue your dream. But is it really bad to just dial it down a little bit and earn money doing something else? Because some people are just too scared to even speak loud about it, and I don't think you should be.
Again, I think this comes down to the fact that music as an artistic pursuit is something that when you decide you're going to do it for a career, and that could be, at the point where you decide you're going to do this at college, you are making a very distinct decision about what you want to do for your future, especially if you have to pay a lot of money. Because that is so much part of who you are as a person, and you define yourself by that, I think we all find it very difficult to make that decision to say, do you know what? It might be a better idea for both me as a person and me financially and for my future if I decided to tone this down a little bit and go and do something else, which might be the best decision you could ever make. But because we define ourselves so strongly by what we do, unlike a lot of other people, it's very difficult to separate ourselves.
You're not noble because you're giving up part of your dream for something as worldly as making money.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't think there's an idealistic conflict here.
No.
There shouldn't be. Because what's more important than anything else is that you have a proper base of existence, that you have food on your table, that you have a place to live in, that you can provide for your family. I think that's more important than anything else.
So this comes down to the contentment thing again. There is no romanticism in eating a cold can of beans out of the can because you can't afford the electricity to use the microwave.
I used to think that's sort of cool.
Artist.
Yeah, I used to think that is sort of cool. But the older I get, the more I realize, no, it's not cool. It's not romantic. It doesn't make you edgy or interesting. It's really just uncomfortable.
But if you're a musician and you have no facilities to do any, I don't mean technical, I mean just facility in general in life, to do the things that you want to do as a musician, you have literally made being a musician into a job. Now, none of us got into this because it was a job, because there are way better ways of earning money out there than going and doing essentially what you would do if you make it into a job is and there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, in no way am I saying this is a problem, but I couldn't exist as a musician, and if this is how my career had gone, I guarantee to you I'd be doing something else right now. Again, not that there's anything wrong with this. Doing function work, dressing up in a tuxedo every 3 days and going and doing, driving six hours to go to a gig, play a wedding and come back again at 4 a.m, then get up the next day and teach for 6 hours, then go and do another gig the next day.
And have a really low paycheck to top it off.
Have a really low paycheck. But I'm a musician. I am doing it for a living. Like the fist pump that I'm doing it. But that's not how either of us earn a living. I'm very lucky. Again, I hesitate to use the word luck because you do, to a certain extent, create your own success and luck. But I'm very lucky, if I'm going to use the term, because I have a passive income, and I have put myself in the position exactly where I can be a little bit picky about what I do. And I have enough time to practice and play because I have this income that's constantly turning over in the background.
Which is why I for example, I love to teach, but only to a certain amount.
Yes,
so I decided to teach at college. It surely pays worse than my private lessons, but I love doing it for the people, for the environment, for the whole aspect of carrying on the torch. It's the same institution that educated me, and I kind of want to pass it on. I like the thought of that. So but I'm certainly not doing it for the money, because if I did, I would be giving 10 Skype lessons a day and charge $50 for each.
Sure, and I've thought about doing that before, because you always have a month that's a little bit like slightly drier than the previous month, and you think, maybe, but then that's not the reason that we're doing what we do. But again, from just a base level, just doing that job gets you out of the room that you spend 90% of your time in, and you're interacting with people, which is so important as well. So if you find yourself in the position where you're thinking, again, we're at the opposite side now to the guy you're talking about at college, the guy who's looking into the music industry and saying, I want in. You have to be a little bit careful about shunning a job that pays very well and allows you the separation in your life of work and, you know, music. If music is just everything that you ever do, it's very difficult to have that work-life separation.
I can see how there's a certain level of attractiveness to being in the music industry when you're an outsider.
Yes.
Because you only ever get to see the fancy and the cool stuff.
Yeah.
But we're doing tax returns like anybody else is, don't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How much paperwork do we do by now? It's not even fun.
No.
How much emails do we write? How much phone calls do we make just to get stuff done?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're doing way more, I mean, you have to do way more paperwork than me over there. I think we've discussed this before. Not that we'll get into that, but that's a very boring topic. But, you know, it's just like any other job. But unlike any other job, that's kind of, you know, where you have a reasonable amount, not all jobs, but most jobs have a reasonable amount of job security. This could all collapse tomorrow. And you've got that constant stress. I mean, it probably won't, but it could, you know. Maybe not tomorrow, but in 6 months' time or a year's time.
Yeah.
You know.
There's this amazing insurance that we have that people will always want to at least learn about the guitar.
Yes.
So if the internet crashes tomorrow, there's nothing stopping us from putting ads in local music stores providing our services. There's a certain safety net there. Even though it's not what we seek out for, and it's not why we got into the game in the first place.
No, interestingly, this job, if you call it a job, has...
We should call it a job. Let's not kid people.
That's a good point. Actually, I don't want to...
Because we even fall into that trap because society doesn't perceive it as a real job because they only see the pinnacle of it. But we adapt our behavior towards our own profession to that. Isn't that kind of ironic? Because really, it is a job, period.
And actually, you saying that is the first time that my brain has gone... Okay, I'll accept that then. Yeah, that's true. That is actually, and I think part of the reason is because it never seems. It doesn't. It always seems like other people work harder than I do because I enjoy what I do. But then, you know, you sit back and you think, actually, yeah, I've worked pretty hard, especially on the instrument. You know, the hours that you've. Again, it's a little bit of a cliche, but the hours that you've put into the instrument is pretty extensive, really. And it's just like any other skill thing. If
you become to be a car mechanic or anything like that, you get into it and your education is finished within 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the rest is just executing your job. Our discovery and our exploration and our practice of the instrument never ever stops. Just the level of maintenance that is required to just keep the same level that you've worked so hard to be in the first place. I mean, if I practice 2 hours a day, that means I get to stay the exact same level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not making money. That's just me being in my home doing the thing.
And that can stress me out as well. From a motivational perspective, there is, like, I'm sure people realize, but maybe for the people who don't, just to maintain, like, I'm known for a particular technique, as you are as well. You're known for a particular technique. To maintain that to the level where whenever you go and play anywhere or do a show or even just turn up somewhere with a guitar, people are like, and I have no problem with this,
do the thing.
Do the thing. And I'm cool with that. That's like my bread and butter. Like, I want to turn up to places and people go, do the thing. Because I know that when I do the thing, that's what they want to see. And I can
It's like you're in Deep Purple and you get tired of playing Smoke on the Water. No, don't. It's the reason why we're able to do this, like, as we do.
Yeah, exactly. But the point with that, you know, is that there's a certain level of maintenance that's required with that. And, you know, that's work. That's not like, we don't just sit all day, like we've talked about before, playing video games and then picking the guitar up and playing a ripping solo and then putting it down again and so on and so forth. Yeah. There's maintenance involved with all of this stuff.
So I hope that this really helped people realize, have a couple of realizations about what it is to be a musician. And also, since we're mostly known for online personas, if we call it that, is that we sometimes get perceived as having no struggles at all and having no laundry to do and having no windows to be fixed or no bathroom to be cleaned.
No asses to wipe.
Exactly.
I'm joking.
We're the same as anybody in that regard. And you know what? If I had been a bit younger still and had one of the people I follow or idolize say those things to me, that would have helped me greatly. So this is kind of why I wanted to talk about this, to really give people a voice for those things, or to speak people's minds, and have it coming from somebody like you has just so much more value to a lot of people.
Well, I think if people realize that it's the old, I'm going to use another cliche, the grass is always greener, but it isn't, you know.
Yeah.
You know, oops, I just dropped my pick. Everything that you do requires work, and it takes up time, and it's not always as romantic as it seems.
And more often than not, you don't get it right.
No, absolutely. But don't get me wrong, I wouldn't want to do anything else right now. You know,
Same.
I think this is an amazing. If you can do it and you enjoy it and you accept the downsides, I would definitely say, provided you are comfortable with the downsides, go for it. You know,
exactly.
It's a just set your goals wisely if you can. You know, especially these days with the way the internet is. But anyway, I'll be kicking off a new discussion here if I don't shut
Definitely.
up. So.
I think we should shut the cameras off in a second now. I want to thank the people who are watching this for joining us in the discussion. I hope you got something interesting out of it, and we shall be doing this a lot more. I will sure be providing you a couple more vlogs in the next few weeks, days, and months. Please check out Tom Quayle. He's on Facebook, he's on YouTube. How can we find you, Tom?
On Facebook, it's just type in Tom Quayle on Facebook or YouTube. I think the actual YouTube is youtube.com/TQ105.
So
and then tomquayle.co.uk, not .com. .co.uk.
Right.
So
and another thing that's very important for me, people, please leave comments. We got to have a discussion under these videos. This is kind of why we're doing it, because we want to engage with you guys, and we want to stir up some interesting discussions and thoughts. And I'm going to be reading them. I might possibly join the discussion, and if we find something that is very interesting to us, there's nothing that's stopping me and Tom from doing another one of those videos on that subject. So please let us know what you think. Stay in touch and have a great time. And don't beat yourself up, and just enjoy life. Is that it? Cool.
Ending with a thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Right, let me stop these.
Bye people. See you around. We love you. Cool.
Hello fellow guitar player, and thank you for checking out my brand new improvisation masterclass Volume 1 Fretboard Visualization and Triads, available right now at jamtrackcentral.com. So if you want to take your improvisation to the next level, head on over to jamtrackcentral.com and download your copy right now.